Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of the 20s Leadership Podcast with me, Lawrence McClellan. Now, I've got a really exciting episode for you guys today. Obviously, in episode 11, we had Jack Burnett on talking about the importance of failure. Now, we have another episode with a guest who's called Daniel Whyte, and he's a personal trainer in Aberdeen. Now, in this episode, Daniel talks us through his journey about going through weight loss. We talk about discipline, we talk about balance, we talk about the importance of going through these aspects of our life on our journey, and how important it is to appreciate the self-leadership side of things going forward. And ultimately, we end with the topic of not doing it by yourself, doing it with a group, a supportive group around you, which is key to our success. So I really hope you enjoy this. If this is something that you want to hear more of or you want to get involved in, let me know. But here's Daniel talking about his story and us discussing it in more detail. I hope you enjoy it.
Daniel, 27 years old as of August, getting on a bit now. From Northeast, was born in Aberdeen, grew up to a point. I lived in London for 4 years. Went to other various places here and there, like I did a wee stint in Germany, a little stint in Switzerland, and I've done a great deal of travelling as well. But have been working as a full-time PT for the last year. It'll be 2 years in February. But before that, I was a fitness instructor for a very, very long time. Probably 5 years, where I worked at the Hilton Gym, which is a very small hotel gym where the clientele that you get isn't really body conscious. They were more sort of a health club. Come, do a little workout, speak to your friends, socialise, pay for a PT because it looks cool, but don't actually want to seriously work out. To then move into Bannatynes, which is like a straight switch. You have athletes that train there, you have people that do bodybuilding, you have people that are like really, really driven to do like endurance stuff, marathons and all this sort of stuff. So I did like a massive jump to there, and then as I worked there, I was there for about 3 years, built up a client base, and then moved to where I'm at just now, which is a more private personal training facility where I do pretty much get the gym to myself. I mean, there are other trainers there, but usually it's very quiet gyms. Certainly during the day, it'll probably just be me and my client and another trainer and their client as well. So it's pretty ideal.
Brilliant. No, that's awesome. Great to hear about the travelling and all that sort of stuff as well. I'm sure that'll come into play at some points as well. So the topic we want to talk about is mainly the sort of journey that you've had through weight loss and actually carrying that through successfully. How do you feel that links to self-leadership, how it links to self-improvement, self-motivation, things like that? Take us through that sort of journey and give us some stories about how that links to those sort of topics.
Okay, so obviously I did judo from a very, very young age. Competed up and down the country, always in a tight-knit team. I stopped when I was 17, if I remember quite rightly. And then from there, obviously started college. Never really drank that much when I was really young, or went out that much, like partying and things like that. So I took full advantage of it when I came into town. I'm also from Turriff, which is like in the back and beyond of nowhere, where there's only one pub really. So I took full advantage of it, went out 3-4 times a week. There's no binge eating till all hours of the morning, and then obviously my weight crept up, and up, and up, and up, and up. And I got to like 23, and like my weight got into like 118 kilos. Now, bearing in mind, being really heavy, it's not all disadvantages. Like, I was, like, really strong, and I could lift weights, that wasn't a problem, and I was lifting heavy numbers, but obviously I couldn't climb the stairs without, like, being out of breath, and for someone that's supposed to be, like, a fitness instructor at the time, which is what I was, no one really told me. Like, everyone was kind of quiet about it. Like, they were a bit afraid to tell me just in case they offended me. So no one ever really told me. It took for me to go to a Christmas night out, and there was photos taken, and I was in a suit, and I looked at them and I was like, wow. That was like the first realization. I was like, wow, like, I am humongous. So then it was literally, I remember it, that was the 6th of January we had that night out, and obviously on the 7th I woke up to these photos and I was like, this is not good. So I literally went and chucked out all the crap in my house. I went straight down, bought myself a decent pair of gym shoes, running shoes, and running was really the first thing that I did to kickstart this whole thing. I was obviously not happy with the way I looked, not happy with myself. I felt very judged by everyone. Whilst starting this, and I did it like an extreme way. Like, as I say, I woke up on the 7th of January and was like, I need to change. That's it, done. I didn't like I didn't sit there and go, oh well, I'll maybe get started on Monday, like, or maybe I'll start next month when I get payday comes, or I just like woke up and that was it, done. As I say, the next morning I got up at 6 a.m. and I went for my first run, which was absolutely horrendous. Funny enough, it was windy, it was rainy, and obviously bearing in mind it was still January, so it was still part snow. But I stuck with it, and then I started seeing results, started dropping weight. Like, I worked out twice a day, pretty much 6 days a week, for the first good 7 months. And obviously I dropped my first week I dropped like a stone. So I thought I was like invincible, but still very like, people are judging me, so I need to try harder. I need to do things more. So then I started like getting up at 6 for a run, coming home, going to sleep. Normally my shift, I always asked to be put on a late shift so I could work out twice before my shift and then work out again after. So the guy that I used to work out with, my mate Nick Ruta, me and him used to go Banks of D from 12 until 1:30 and do every day full body weight session, and then we would do our shift together, and then we would do kettlebells and running and sprints and at night. So I was working out like 3 times a day at one point. And then I mirrored that by doing things extremely at home, like making sure my calories were like point on. I was micromanaging everything, counting everything. If I didn't know what was going in it, I wouldn't eat it. And then I started letting people down, like nights out, and obviously were happening, and people were turning 21 and people were turning 30, and like I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll see you there. Never went, just because I was too afraid that if I got into a state of drinking, that would lead to a state of eating, and then I would be knocked off for whatever it is I do for the next couple of days. So I never had a good balance to start with. Like, I was like, I lived like a monk for a good 6-7 months. And I dropped a serious amount of weight. Like I think it was the 5th month. I went from 118 to 98 kilos. And, obviously still wasn't happy. But then I'd lost a few friends on the way. I had annoyed people all the time by like lying and saying I'd go out. I wouldn't ever make it. And I totally was because I would never actually say, no, I'm not going. I would just be like, oh yeah, I'll meet you there, and then I just wouldn't show up. Even something as simple as like a cinema trip was quite hard for me because my friends would either A, go to Burger King before, or they would sit in, have a hot dog, bags of popcorn, bags of sweets, and, like a litre of cola, and like, I just couldn't sit and watch them do that, so then I just separated myself from the situation. So for a good long time, I was like secluded on my own. But that was my fault. I forced myself to do that because I needed to change, and I did make a huge change. And it was my friend Stephen. He was like, "Oh, I'm gonna move to New Zealand," and I was like, obviously discussions with my mum about how I'd been acting lately and all this sort of stuff. I'd obviously went a bit weird. She was just like, "Why don't you go? And at least go for the first I think it was a month and a half, and you can go traveling with them." Now, obviously, you're talking to a person that's just religiously lived day by day, literally to a routine T. Like, I was never late. I never ate out with friends at all. Just because I was too scared. So to tell me to then ditch all that and in 2 weeks' time fly halfway across the world and start living out the back of a camper van was like an absolute shock to the system. So obviously went there, did the touring. Amazing country. Have you ever been?
No. It's definitely on the list.
New Zealand is amazing. I am very lucky to have done both islands in a little slow camper van. South Island, amazing. North Island, beautiful. Honestly, out of this world. We ended up staying, a guy came over here to play rugby who I worked with. His name's Adam Blake. He was like, "Oh, just tell my family you're in town and they'll put you up." They put us up for 2 weeks, paid for everything,
Wow.
fed us every day and showed us around the surrounding areas because New Zealand is quite small. It doesn't take long to get from one side to another. It's 60 miles. So yeah, did that, came back. Obviously my weight had gotten back to I think it was 106. So I put on 8 kilos being away for a month and a half because obviously the activities we were doing, we did do whitewater rafting and climbing and things like that, but obviously that was mirrored with a night out every night. Amazing food, and yeah, just not specific enough activity. I didn't go to the gym once or I didn't run once. So I just felt like I was back to ground zero. I felt like I was starting over again, even though I was nowhere near as heavy as what I was. My mindset though was, oh, you're just back here again. So then obviously took longer to get back into the swing of things. The most hardest thing was going back to work, and obviously everyone knew what I was doing, so constantly kept asking me how's the weight loss journey going? How's that? And I had to be oh, it's not really good at the moment because I just can't be bothered. I think I took a good 3 months to start back into motivation. And one of the ways I did it was I was okay, I'll go and apply for a job at a facility where, because again, even when I came back, people still weren't driving health and fitness. It was a health club. There was a cafe upstairs that people were "Oh, we'll do 20 minutes on the cross trainer. We'll maybe dip our feet in the jacuzzi and then we'll go and have coffee." So no one was "Dan, you need to work out. You have a class where people are looking at you and being he's my role model. So I need to look like you." So that's when I went and applied at Valentine's, and I remember my first week there, my fitness manager was "Dude, you're overweight. You need to get yourself in serious shape. How can you expect to chat to people when your diet's poor and your exercise is poor?" And then again, that just gave me that little kick and that wake up call. I didn't do things as extremely as what I did, but then I started, and then I got down to as low. It took me a year, but I lost another further 20 kilos. So I got down to 78 kilos at one point. But even then, like, that was, for me personally, was too low. So then my mindset was, I'm not happy because, like, to maintain this, I had to give like 90% of my life for like a 10% change. And I wasn't prepared to do that. So yeah, that's pretty much my journey to date. I mean, I roughly sit at about, I'm like 92 kilos at the minute, so it fluctuates. I do, or I'm going to, I've got a judo comp next month where I'll get to under 90, but I'm quite fairly happy to sit anywhere between 89 and 93 kilos. So yeah.
Nice one, perfect. Really interesting, like little points and stuff. The main thing that kind of like stood out to me, which I'd really be interested to hear your thoughts on more, is the habit side of things, the routine side of things, and how important that is to your success, especially when you've talked about how these opportunities and little things that life throw at you, and you almost have to be able to adapt your routine and your habits to fit into that while still being happy with what's going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm a very, very, very big believer in, if you want your body to change, or you want something to change, you have to be prepared to do something that you don't like. Now, that could be anything. I'm not making that specific to one thing, but I love to sleep, and I love a lie-in. And if you ask anyone that knows me, they know I love a lie-in. So I was just like, okay, I'll tell you what. I will start getting up at 5:30 every day, and I'll be at the gym for 6, and I'll work out at 6. So for me, that was a big thing that I did like instantly. As I say, remember, 6th was the night out, 7th was the whole epiphany change, and the 8th is where I got up, because I'd already got my trainers and gotten rid of all the rubbish, and I went for my first run. So from there on, it was 5:30 every day. I woke up, I did my routine. But that 6 months before I went to New Zealand, it was very regimented. Like, to the point where if I didn't have things planned out, I was obviously stressed. And if I was stressed, it would really get me down mentally. And then it would just be a vicious cycle. And I wouldn't be happy until I physically got either paper to pen. I actually think I used my iPhone calendar religiously and recorded everything that I did. So if I had to be so obviously sometimes my shift work changed, and there were some times where if it couldn't go after because I had to either work later or do something, I would get up at 4 and I would run 4:30 to 5:30 and be showered, ready to start work at 6. And that's like how like precise I was with these timings and everything. And then when I finished my shift, if it was an early, I would go work out straight away. Then I would come home, rest, eat, and then I would go back to the gym later on at night. And I was obviously like, it made me feel sick if I couldn't get to the gym or I couldn't work out. And that's why I never did anything. Like, I never socialized. I mean, I did go to a few things, but like not to the amount to what I was known for, or what I'm known for now. I've got a much better balance now, but that 6 months, like, I remember having an argument with Kyle Taylor actually, because he was just like, oh, come out for a meal, you know, you don't need to be so, like, precise with everything, and we had a massive argument because he just couldn't understand that, like, I was on a journey and that I didn't want to be taken off. He didn't see it. I didn't see it, his point, so we just obviously clashed and argued. But he was right. Like, I hate to say it, but he was right. I should have just went out. I should have, because it made me happy sitting on my own at home, like, festing things and worrying about what people thought, and, like, because that's what made me more crazy, is that I always thought people are judging me. I need to work harder. I need to do things more. But then, on the flip side, when I went to New Zealand, I learned to relax a little bit. When I came back and then started Valentine's, even though there was much more pressure on me to look better in the role I was in, my approach to it was totally different. I enjoyed working out. I still did the belief that if you're going to change or you want change, you need to shift yourself to do something you don't want to do. And again, for me, that was getting up at 5:30. So I got a gym partner. Her name was Chloe. She was actually my first ever proper PT client. First ever proper. And she will tell you the amount of arguments we had at 6 a.m, having to get up early, meet at the gym, but no, she was awesome. She had a lot to do with my success. And that was just feeding off someone that I didn't even know. Like, I met her, trained her, and then she was just like, oh, it was actually her that said, if you need, like, someone to speak to you in the gym, like, if you want someone to train with, just let me know. And then I was kind of like, oh, she just trying to get free PT, or she stood by me the whole way, and she's a massive part of what I achieved. She was one of the first people that made me feel confident about myself and not to be so worried about what other people say and think. I'll give you an example. I did a body pump class, my first ever body pump class. Didn't really know the release. It was like, I did the 2 days, because what they do is they don't teach you the full release. You only need to learn one track, and you teach it to your peers, and they pass you based on that track, and then you go away and learn the rest of the release and then teach it to your class. This woman tore me to shreds after the class. Literally tore me to shreds. And she was just like, Dan, you couldn't count, your timing was off, your moves were wrong, you were going at a totally different time to the music, you didn't pre-screen anyone. Bearing in mind, like, standing up in front of 30 people on your first day of doing body pump is quite nerve-wracking, but she just literally kept digging that nail into my back, and Chloe was the only one out of those 30 people that stuck up for me. And I think that's why we got on so well. Like, she just attached to me like that, and boom. And we're still friends these days. Like, I'm actually training her, my group PT sessions every Monday morning, so we're still really good friends. But I'd learnt from the mistakes of doing things so regimented. Like, I'd learnt that going out on a Wednesday night is not that bad. Like, it's a midweek. Enjoy yourself. Go out. And I was still losing weight. And then I started back judo, and that's why, because I wanted to fight in an under 81 kilo category. And that helped. I was enjoying that again. And judo is a very, like, social thing. Like, you'll know yourself with football, you all go out as a team. Judo is the exact same. We have judo nights out, we go to competitions together, we go out after. It's usually because we have to get up and go somewhere to compete, like Glasgow, Edinburgh, London, Birmingham. We went to Cardiff, Preston. We all have a night out after, and there's like 30 of us, so it's awesome. But I also learnt to not care what people thought. That was big. That was a big turning point. Is halfway through my sort of lower 80s kilo weight, I just didn't care what people thought anymore. And even when I got to my 78 kilos, like, people were like, "Oh, Dan, you look really ill. Like, you're really pale." Like, I was like,
why do you think it was then that kind of tweaked that perception of it?
Because another thing, like, I've never had, like, or before, certainly in most of my adult life, I'd never had abs. And when I got there, I got abs. And my main goal for a very, very, very long time was to get abs. And when I got there, I was like, I don't really see what the fuss is. Like,
right, it's good for 5 minutes.
Yeah, this does not faze me in the slightest. And I held on to them for a couple of months, maybe, if that, weeks maybe, because it just didn't faze me. So then I started looking at more the performance side of things and health. And I was not healthy being lower 80 kilo, because again, I was starting to get into that mindset of I need to do things into a routine. So again, I would get so obsessed that I would weigh myself every day. And if I wasn't the weight that I was supposed to be, I would start micromanaging things again. I'd be like, right, okay, well, I had an extra 180 calories yesterday. Right, okay, I'm going to need to go work that off today. Do you know what I mean? Like, I really started to get into that obsessive behavior again. And for me, that's not healthy, personally, for myself. Because then when I get obsessive and I get grumpy, that portrays onto my work. And then my clients see it. And I look tired and haggard. And yeah, it just wasn't enjoyable. So when I did get the abs, I looked and I was like, yeah, okay, I've got them. They were alright. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. I know if push comes to shove, I can get down to these levels. Yeah, fine. But wasn't happy. So then obviously weight went back up, and I'm much happier now.
Great. And obviously, like, discipline was a massive part of this. Whether it was the routine that you had at the start and that obsession, but now it seems like there's a lot more sort of balance to what you do now and what you kind of deem to or portray to be success for you now. How important is each one, and do you feel like it's something that people need to go through one to get to the other, or do you feel there's one and a wrong one, or how do you feel about both of those sort of, that extreme discipline as opposed to that balance?
So my discipline comes from like my family probably. All of them are really hard workers. We don't tend to take sick days. I think at Ballantyne's I took one sick day in the whole 3 years I was there, and I actually think I got forced to go home rather than actually forced to sit. So, and judo as well. A lot of discipline to that sport. You got to have a lot of respect for the people that you're around. So I think I put myself in that mindset of I have a goal. I need to achieve it. What do I need to do in between? Now, don't get me wrong. I think you need some form of discipline. I don't think you need to be as extreme as what I started off with. I do believe in, because then again, remember I spoke about like losing friends, annoying people and lying to people. I turned that all around with my second bash at it, by making friends and making new contacts and inspiring people. Like my first time round, I cut 20 kilos in 6 months, but I didn't inspire anyone. Like nobody was like, oh, everyone was like, oh yeah, well done. But then nobody that was like my sort of weight before was like, oh, I want to do what he's done, because I did it in such an extreme way. Whereas like second time round, people were like, you've maybe heard this before. Oh, I can't run. I hate running. Like, doing a marathon for me is like, oh, it's just too much of a hard goal. Now, I just went, okay, I'll go do it. So I went and did Inverness Half, a month later, and this was very, very low actual mileage training. Went and did Edinburgh Marathon. And then, a month and a half after, I did a half Ironman. At Ballantyne's, which was a mile swim, a 55-mile cycle on a watt bike, and then a 13.1 mile run on a treadmill, one after another, no rest. I then did the Illuminator after that, which I don't know if you know what that is.
Yeah, the one in the dark, isn't it? Or through the night out in a Boyne, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very hilly, let me just tell you that. And then last year I did the London Marathon, and I think I made a lot of people realise that like you can do it. You just have to apply yourself to do it. Now I started a running group for the London Marathon because I was like, this time I don't want to run on my own. I don't want to train on my own. So I'll enlist other people. Now I remember, I'm not going to say names, but a few of my co-workers were like, "Oh, you're not really going to get anyone interested in that in January," because I got in very late. I got into a charity place in January and it was in April. And bearing in mind, it was still getting dark at like 5:30. So two people were like, "Oh, you're not going to get anyone." So I was like, "Oh, surely someone will run with me." So I slammed a poster up. I put a wee thing on the band's Facebook page on the Thursday night for the following Tuesday. 6. First week, 34 people. I walked into the cafe and I was like, surely all these people are not here. Next week after, once I obviously took the starting photo and publicised it a little bit, 44 people. Do you know how hard it is to get 44 people to cross the road at Bridgedon Pursley Bridge? It was chaos. At rush hour as well, when there's traffic everywhere, it was chaos. But I don't regret it because, again, I made a lot of friends with guys that were a lot better runners than me, a lot faster runners. It gave me a lot of tips for my marathons. And I made also a lot of people, like, for instance, I'll use Steph Crawford as an example. I'd never ran, always wanted to run. And there was actually another girl called Hannah Trail as well. She wanted to run, never really ran. She was a bit like me, started off really overweight, but got down. She did her first 10k. Baker Hughes with me, I think, was her first. And then she ran the Aberdeen half. And that was quite an achievement for her, and it's quite an achievement for Steph as well. So it's more trying to get people to realise that you can actually run, because I'm a heavy guy, and trust me, it's not easy for me, and I can do it. So you just need to apply yourself to do it. And I'm just disciplined enough to do it and have a good lifestyle.
No, absolutely. That's some good stories about how the discipline molds into that balance side of things. But what I'm getting from that kind of finally is that almost going through that, you find this satisfaction within yourself when it comes to that almost giving back and serving others side of things as well. Is that something that you feel kind of motivates you now, having gone through that journey?
Yeah, definitely. So the guy I started the running club with, Matthew Johnston, he and myself get a massive kick out of people achieving their goals. And again, he was the same. Boy couldn't even run, a mile, and he did the Aberdeen half as well. So I'm not saying I was the sole reason, because I kind of roped him into it, and I was like, you need to be my back runner whilst I run up and down telling everyone where to go. But he ran some hard, cold miles with me at times, and I saw when he did Hannah's his girlfriend, so when he did it, I kind of was just like, I know it's not the sole reason, I'm the sole reason why he did it, but I played a very big part in it. And everyone else that does anything that I have a part to play in, like, I get a massive, like, high off that. And it's not so much that they've made a change in either their performance or their physical shape or their tone or they're stronger or whatever, but it's the mindset and the way that they approach things. It's not such a self-defeatist attitude of, oh, I don't think I can do that. Oh no, I'm bowing out here. It's now people are asking me, do you want to sign up for XYZ, and do you want to do the next marathon, and the Illuminator's coming round again, like, and the Illuminator for me was really horrible, but people are now asking me to do stuff, if I can run with them or if I can do stuff with them, and for me that's quite like a buzz. Like, it makes me feel good because now I've transformed them. And it's now backtracked. They're now asking me to do things. So.
Brilliant. No, absolutely. That's quite a nice circle from, your sort of very sort of self-disciplined, getting up and doing the things that you don't want to do, and people maybe not looking at that and being inspired by it, to all the way around to people asking you to come and do stuff with them. That's brilliant. I love that. I guess to kind of wrap up, what I think would be really useful would be, from any of the points that you've talked about, and or anything else in regards to that self leadership side of things when it comes to people becoming the best version of themselves. What sort of things would you want to leave with the listeners in that regard?
So obviously, one of the things that health and fitness did for me, personally, I think if you have a healthy body, you have a healthy mind. And if you have a healthy mind, you can literally set yourself up to do anything. And for example, that was like a boy that couldn't run up the stairs, doing 2 marathons, doing other endurance events. Now, obviously, I turned full-time PT with a very, very little client base. I actually only think I started off with 2. Now, bearing in mind, you need to pay a lot of rent money when you rent a gym floor, to a point where I built up a nice enough client base that I totally moved to a private facility where there isn't so many members that I can go and speak to. Like, I need to do a lot of things on social media. I need to self-promote myself. I need to advertise myself. I need to go out and gain leads, like, for me. Now, I think I'm doing pretty well at the moment, but I don't think I would have that drive and motivation to be a leader of my own business if I didn't go through some of the things that I've been through. Like, I think I've had to go through some of the rubbish to come out at the end a little bit better. Now, personally, I'm always going to struggle with my weight. I've never been a light, thin guy. I've always been, maybe not at such a young age, but certainly at school, I was always a chunkier boy, but still did a lot of sports. So I'm never, and again, remember, I've already talked about being at such a low weight and I wasn't happy. So I think that I've made the mistakes I have now, and now I'm trying to create a little empire for myself. I'm trying to put my message across so you don't make the mistakes that I've made, and you don't have to do it alone, because bearing in mind I did that first 6 months, or 6-7 months, I can't remember how really long it was. I did it totally on my own, and that was the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. I didn't ask for help really. I had Nick and Kyle and people, other odds and sods train with me, but in terms of like dealing with things up here, I was totally on my own, and that has now totally changed my way of the outlook of the way I think of things. And that's why I get up in the morning. That's why I do what I do, because I want to make sure that the public or my clients or my new potential clients, that they don't make those mistakes, because you don't have to be alone in this. Like, it's like if you needed an operation, like, you wouldn't operate on yourself, would you? You would go to a doctor for it. It's just the same. People walk about the gym and look at things and don't know how to use them properly, make mistakes, and like the media and the papers and everything, really like demonize some things that make you think about things that are just totally wrong. Obviously, I was victim to that. I fell for it. So, like, I did things like cut out all extra sugar, dairy, and carbs for the first 7 months, and that's why I cut weight like that. But then I went to New Zealand and had a little bit of carbs, and I put on blooming 8 kilos within a month and a bit. So, like, it's things like that. Like, I'm here to try and help and make sure that you guys don't make mistakes.
Love it. No, that's brilliant. I've loved the stories. Very interesting. Very interesting, mate. But no, appreciate that. And I'm sure this won't be the only time that we have a good chat on the podcast. So thank you. Hi guys. So that was Dan on his journey and his story, about a lot to do with discipline, a lot to do with this progress through our journey. And I really hope you enjoyed it. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to Dan, and I'm sure it won't be the only time that he's on the podcast. Now, obviously, I've got my network out there that I absolutely love and adore, and I would love for people that are interested in getting stuck in to the podcast as well. I'm very open to that. There's no wrong topic with this. I know I'll get wound up for that statement, but I'm very open to the opportunity to talk about personal sort of opinions and perspectives on aspects of self-leadership. So if you're interested, let me know. Albeit in the meantime, we obviously have our Facebook page where I'm fairly active on that. If not, I would love to connect with you anyway to discuss anything self-leadership based, and I hope to hear again from you guys soon. Have a good one.